Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today. So let's start off talking about Karrion Kross, talking about Monday Night Raw. Now, I know obviously we had an episode of NXT last night, but people within WWE, the WWE Universe, as WWE likes to call them, social media, is still certainly talking about Karrion Kross, his debut on Monday Night Raw this past week, his loss on Monday Night Raw this past week to Jeff Hardy. Of course, Karrion Kross has been undefeated in NXT in singles competition for over a year. He's the NXT champion, and he lost to Jeff Hardy in just 100 seconds on Monday Night Raw on Monday. It got a lot of people talking on social media, and it's got a lot of people talking within WWE, specifically on the NXT brand internally. Now, there was said to be a lot of, quote, shock and frustration within WWE NXT over NXT champion Karrion Kross losing his official main roster debut match to Jeff Hardy on Monday Night Raw this week. Now, as I mentioned, Karrion Kross came out on Monday Night Raw as the NXT champion, dominated Jeff Hardy mostly, but came up short. He wasn't accompanied by Scarlett. They just randomly announced that Karrion Kross would be making his Raw debut after a commercial break, came out not to as much fanfare as he does in NXT, and lost pretty quickly. Now, after the match, he did cut a promo saying Jeff Hardy had just made the biggest mistake of his career, but it didn't seem that threatening because, let's face it, the guy just lost in just over a minute. Now, in an update, several NXT talent and staff were reportedly shocked and frustrated with this loss. This is according to a report by Fightful Select, which of course is their Patreon service. Be sure to check that out. Now, there was reportedly significant frustration over how the likes of Finn Balor, Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, Santos Escobar, Oney Lorcan, and other names had worked incredibly hard to make Karrion Kross feel as dominant as possible during the entirety of his NXT run to date. Other names include the likes of, as I mentioned, Damian Priest, Tommaso Ciampa, pretty much every single major name that's been on NXT in the last 18 months or so, including the likes of Keith Lee, have done their utmost best to put Karrion Kross over as this big, dominating superstar, unbeatable NXT superstar. And what happens in his debut match? He loses. Poof! All of that mystique, all of that feeling of a big name that's going to dominate the Monday Night Raw brand disappeared. Now, the general mood, it says in this report, amongst those in NXT was said to be, quote, not mad, disappointed vibe, as they felt like this represented how NXT as a brand was viewed by the higher-up WWE officials as a whole. Now, it was noted by one source who spoke to Fightful that the loss felt like a message being sent to the entire NXT brand, though they didn't elaborate on what they thought that message was. Now, regarding Karrion Kross, people have been talking about how does Karrion Kross feel about this. He appeared to be in good spirits backstage after the match at the Toyota Center in Dallas on Monday night. One talent did note that Karrion Kross was being put in an unfavorable position considering his spot as a protected talent on one brand and a new talent on another brand. Now, there's no word yet on what WWE has planned for Karrion Kross as of right now. Of course, he did appear last night on NXT. We'll touch on that later on. But, you know, I mentioned this yesterday, so I don't want to get too much into, rehashing what we spoke about yesterday, to be honest with you. But it doesn't change my mind. I saw Peter Rosenberg, and I think sometimes he just does this because there's this weird thing on social media nowadays of people that say stuff they don't believe in, or they say purposely outrageous stuff just to get a reaction. Because if people are responding to you negatively, that's engagement. And he said it's not about NXT. It had nothing to do with NXT. It was on Monday Night Raw. It had nothing to do with NXT. It's a Raw story. It doesn't impact NXT at all. He's the NXT champion. He was wearing the NXT championship bout. He's been undefeated since he debuted in NXT, and he lost to a guy. This is another excuse I've heard. Jeff Hardy's a multiple-time world champion. He's one of the greatest WWE superstars of all time. How is losing to Jeff Hardy a bad thing? Blah, blah, blah. I would totally agree with that if Jeff Hardy had been booked like a former world champion, but he hasn't. This is a guy that's putting over Jinder Mahal's henchmen on WWE Main Event. I think his most recent victory on Raw is beating Cedric Alexander. Apart from that, he's been doing jobs for ages, ever since he really moved to Monday Night Raw. And suddenly now, you want to justify Jeff Hardy's a big deal, he's a world champion. He hasn't felt like it. And some people are saying, well, he brought back the No More Words theme, so that's a good enough reason for him to end the undefeated streak of Karrion Kross. Are you kidding me? And I mentioned this on social media as well, and I don't want to compare Karrion Kross to Goldberg or Brock Lesnar or any of those big names, those big dominating names throughout WWE and pro wrestling history, but I'm pretty sure because we don't know. We don't know what Karrion Kross can or can't become. We don't know. But I'm pretty sure Goldberg or Brock Lesnar weren't doing jobs in their opening match. And again, you get this weird justification because you've got these justifiers out there. This weird justification of, well, he's got to do jobs eventually. Yeah, he does. Maybe in a pay-per-view main event, you know, considering NXT have put in all this work to make this guy feel like a big deal for 18 months. Yes, he should do jobs, but in a main event. Sell some tickets, sell a pay-per-view, sell, you know, network subscriptions, whatever you want to do. You don't do it in a random match on Monday Night Raw in his debut. I mentioned he cut that promo afterwards saying, Jeff Hardy just made the biggest mistake of your life. Well, you don't feel that threatened by the guy because he just lost very quickly. It's stupid. And again, the amount of people, I'm actually quite shocked, to be honest with you. The amount of people that are trying to justify or find some way of going, I'm interested to see what happens next and blah, blah, blah. Oh, come on. Stop justifying things. Stop trying to be that guy or that girl on social media that gets attention. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And I don't blame those in NXT that feel slighted by it. NXT, those within NXT, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, they do all of these interviews all the time, don't they? We're not developmental, we're a third brand. Triple H, we're not developmental, we're a third brand. I'm pretty sure Monday Night on Raw, Karrion Kross losing in 100 seconds to Jeff Hardy says exactly what Vince McMahon thinks NXT is. And it isn't a third brand, it's developmental. The issue is that their developmental is on the same network as USA Network, as Monday Night Raw on the USA Network. Granted, not as many people watch, but it's still on the same network. So people that go, people don't know who Karrion Kross is, they don't watch NXT. Well, they don't, but it's on the same network, and your network has been plugging NXT for the last few months. Raw's the lead into NXT, right? The narrative changes every single week, but the one consistent thing is here, Vince McMahon has his feeling about NXT, Triple H has his, they don't cross over. So I'm kind of done with this argument of NXT's a third brand, it's a full-fledged third brand, it's like Raw and SmackDown. No, it's not. NXT moved from the WWE Network to the USA Network, but it's still developmental. Now it's just on cable television. That's it. That is the difference right there. Simple as that. Let's talk about the Raw ratings, because I think as expected, the Raw ratings did a significant bump this past week. Monday's live post-Money in the Bank edition of Monday Night Raw drew an average of 1.923 million viewers on the USA Network, according to Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics. Now, this is up 20%. So a big jump, 20% from last week's 1.609 million viewers for the Money in the Bank Go Home edition of Monday Night Raw, which of course was taped and the final episode of the WWE Thunderdome era. Now, Raw drew a 0.57 rating in the key 18-49 demographic. This is up 32.6% from last week's 0.43 key demo rating. That 0.57 key demo rating represents 741,000 viewers in that 18 to 49 range, which is up 32.32% from the 560,000 18 to 49 viewers that last week's 0.43 key demo rating represented. Now, we'll get into some other things as well. So, instead of breaking down the hours, because obviously I can tell you that it goes high, low, lower. But Raw drew the most viewers since the post-WrestleMania 37 episode on April 12th, and the third highest viewership for the year so far. Raw was tied with two other episodes for the fifth best 18 to 49 key demographic rating of the year. Viewership was up from 20% from the previous week, and the key demo, as I mentioned, was up 32.6% from last week. And Monday Night Raw's viewership was up 18% from the same week in 2020, which they'll be happy with, while the key 18 to 49 key demographic was up 24% from the same week in 2022. As it should be, by the way. If you're going to look at it year on year, WWE at this point was still in the Performance Center with those empty arena shows. They had the NXT Performance Center recruits around the ring at this point. So the rating should be up from last year. The viewership should also be up from last year. I think it says a lot because I saw a lot of people saying about how great this was for Monday Night Raw. See, live crowds and everything, they helped WWE. We're back to normal. See, WWE's back to doing good business on Monday nights, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Look, yes, live crowds helped the ratings and the viewership go up. That's true. But if we're at a point now, and if WWE are at a point now where they're celebrating Monday Night Raw, the flagship broadcast of WWE. I know SmackDown's the priority nowadays because it makes far more money for WWE than Monday Night Raw does. Nevertheless, if WWE honestly is celebrating Monday Night Raw, a show that's been on the air nearly 30 years, 28 years, or however long it is. If they're celebrating doing 1.9 million viewers, it says a lot, a lot. Now, again, I know people will say, well, television has changed, and they still did a good number in the key demo, and I'm sure they were up there in terms of being #1 on cable and all this kind of stuff. And people will say, well, if AEW did that, people would be absolutely thrilled with that. Of course they would. AEW's only been around for, 2-3 years. If they did 1.9 million viewers, people would lose their minds because they're a smaller company. Raw's been on the air for nearly 30 years. And this is a brand that, again, it's funny because you look back 7 years ago, the infamous Triple H promo where he comes out, talks about his friend Mark and sending a tweet and being angry. And we'll talk about complaining, by the way, later on. That was viewed by something like 4 million viewers or over 4 million viewers. And now, Monday Night Raw, WWE, they're celebrating doing 1.9 million viewers. John Cena opened Monday Night Raw this week and they still couldn't do over 2 million. It speaks volumes, not just for WWE, I get it, for television as well. And there are other metrics nowadays. It's absolutely true. I say that all the time. Social media, YouTube, etc. They're all important metrics and they all pull together. But I think it's fascinating that a lot of people are saying, see, WWE, they're back. Live crowds, John Cena, still couldn't do over 2 million viewers. It makes you wonder, will they ever get that number over 2 million for a sustained period again? I think the answer is no. The answer, I think, is plainly no. We have an update when it comes to Bray Wyatt, his WWE absence. Now, it's been reported by PW Insider that it's believed that WWE is keeping the Fiend Bray Wyatt off of television for the time being for reasons that are not related to creative. It's important to state here. Now, according to PW Insider, WWE sources remain quiet on Wyatt's status beyond the idea that he's being held off of television for a specific reason. The belief among some within WWE that Wyatt's absence is not related to a creative issue. It was previously reported that Wyatt's time away was not a case of the third-generation wrestler having heat for anything. He is very well liked within the company and very well respected. It was noted, though, that internally there is still no timetable for Bray Wyatt's return to active competition for the company. Of course, he's been away from WWE since losing to Randy Orton at WrestleMania 37, where he was turned on by Alexa Bliss. He did appear on the post-WrestleMania edition of Monday Night Raw in a Firefly Funhouse segment and indicated he was getting ready for a fresh start. Now, it was noted that the original plan for WrestleMania 37 was for Wyatt to win, but the match result was changed that weekend to Randy Orton getting the victory. Now, there had been recently some online speculation on Bray Wyatt possibly returning for SummerSlam, as he was advertised for the August 9th edition of Raw from Orlando at one point, but it's still not confirmed that he's going to be working that edition of Monday Night Raw. This new reports indicate he may be kept off of television past early August despite this advertisement. So there's not really a lot more to say on that because I don't want to speculate because that's not fair. According to this report, it's not a creative issue. It's not a heat issue. I could speculate, and I think everyone could, and I'm sure some people will. That's not fair. That's not fair to do. Certainly those, BS reports, check where you get your information from. Certainly. We're talking about other stuff. I don't pay attention to it. Remember where you get your information from. PW Insider is very reputable, and they're saying it's nothing to do with creative. It's nothing to do with heat. We will have to wait and see. The sooner that Bray Wyatt gets back, the better. Obviously, there'll probably need to be tweaks to his character anyway, in my opinion. But we'll have to wait and see. Look, the thing is, with stuff like this, we were saying the same about Keith Lee. The reports about Keith Lee returning to WWE television were the same until this past week. There isn't really a timetable. His status is unclear. We don't know what's going on, etc., etc., etc. He returned this past Monday. So when it comes to Bray Wyatt, again, they don't say it's a creative issue. They don't say it's heat. He could return, I guess, whenever. The sooner the better, because when you have someone like a talent, and that's what he is, a talent, like Bray Wyatt, you want him to get back on the show because irrespective of what you think about his character and the Fiend and the Bray Wyatt and all that kind of stuff, he is a very talented pro wrestler, and the show benefits for him being on it. Especially a show like Monday Night Raw, which even on Monday, there were points in that show that were a complete snooze fest. And just ask the crowd, because they were very quiet points on Monday. So the sooner he gets back, the better. This is such a great story. WWE has filed to trademark, quote, "complaining is not conversation," earlier this month. Now, there's no word yet on what the term will be used for, but WWE made the filing on July 16th. The following two use descriptions were included with the United States Patent and Trademark Office for entertainment services, clothing, etc., whatever. I don't know what this is about, but the first thing that came to my mind was Stand Up for WWE. If you recall what that was, this was around, 2010, 2011. It was around the time that Linda McMahon was running for office. And obviously, because politics being what it is, and rightfully so, when Linda McMahon was running for office, a lot of WWE's shady past was brought up. Some of the things that they did on television for entertainment, obviously some of the stuff off of television, the numerous scandals throughout WWE history was brought up. And WWE on their own television started the Stand Up for WWE campaign, if you will. That was what it sounds like it was, stand up and be proud to be a WWE fan. And they provide entertainment. They have Be a Star rallies. They do this, they do that, they do that. This it gave me flashbacks to that. The irony is that complaining is not conversation, is complaining at the same time. And it's just humorous. I find it funny because, again, we don't know what it's for. It must be said. We don't know what this is for. Logic would suggest it has something to do with, again, people complaining about WWE on social media, I guess, or people talking bad about their characters or their product. If it is about that, the reason they're complaining is because parts of it suck. Complaining is not conversation. Well, what is then? Constructive criticism. Okay, I'll tell you and I think that's what a lot of people like. A lot of people on social media, when they're saying, WWE is especially like Raw or whatever, it's a bad segment, it's a bad product, or the creative is bad, or the dialogue doesn't make any sense, no human talks like this, it's like it's written by a 5-year-old, all that kind of stuff. That isn't complaining. That is constructive criticism and telling you, as a paying customer, what happened to the audience is always right. You're getting to a point now, especially now, live crowds are returning. They paid their hard-earned money to purchase a ticket. What changed from the audience is always right? Well, if you've paid your hard-earned money, you can say whatever you want. But don't complain, because that's not conversation. You can't have it both ways. We really want your money. Please come to our shows. Please come to our shows. Don't boo, though, because we'll pipe in our own reactions anyway, because complaining is not conversation. What a load of rubbish. What a load of rubbish. It's kind of like WWE's realizing our creative's crap. We'll pipe in some cheers, like for Jackson Riker on Monday. But if people are still complaining, we're going to chastise them, because that's not conversation. That's not being nice. Well, WWE, they're not very nice to other companies quite often, even their fans. So, a bit of a taste of their own medicine. Bobby Lashley, now he is going to be challenged by Goldberg at SummerSlam for the WWE Championship. Of course, Goldberg returned on Monday Night Raw this past week to challenge Lashley for said championship at the biggest event of the summer, but Bobby Lashley has declined. Bobby Lashley took to Twitter yesterday and said, quote, "You don't belong in the same world as me, let alone the same ring. Get that close again, MVP won't be able to hold me back. No thanks, old man." That last bit that Lashley said there, "no thanks, old man," is I think pretty much what everyone said on Monday when Goldberg came out. No thanks, old man. Now again, I saw people, the justifiers out there on Raw on Monday saying, well, Goldberg got a pretty big reaction, and he did. He got a pop, because if you've paid a ticket, you weren't expecting to see Goldberg, so you were very happy. Oh, value for money. I get to see Goldberg, WWE Hall of Famer, former WCW legend, world champion, the Streak. Of course people were happy to see Goldberg, but they were still piping in those Goldberg chants. Let's not make a mistake there. And obviously, I said this on social media yesterday, I don't have a problem. I really don't. I don't have a problem with Goldberg working at SummerSlam or wrestling on SummerSlam. My issue is, why on earth is he wrestling for the WWE Championship? And social media, again, WWE on their Instagram page, they even kind of pointed this out. Goldberg, so many times in his WWE return run, has just walked into the ring and just challenged someone for the WWE Championship or the Universal Championship. He does it all the time. Kevin Owens, I'm next. The Fiend, I'm next. Drew McIntyre, I'm next. Bobby Lashley, I'm next. Oh, I didn't realize it was that easy. I didn't realize, if that's the case, Bobby Lashley, if you're watching, after Goldberg, I'm next. Because apparently that's what we have to do, me and you. In September, Clash of Champions, whatever the event is, I'm next. Pick me. Because that's how simple it needs to be. Now, of course, Goldberg is going to be facing Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship, so even though Bobby Lashley has declined, I'm sure it'll be something like Goldberg comes out and goes, oh, you're scared, or you're a little scaredy cat, fraidy cat, and suddenly Bobby Lashley will be like, oh, nobody calls me out. And next thing you know, it's a WWE Championship match at SummerSlam, because that's how it works. That's the writing. That's the skill level of the writers. NXT Takeover, the rumored NXT Takeover for SummerSlam weekend has been confirmed. The next NXT Takeover event has been confirmed for SummerSlam weekend. It was announced last night during NXT that NXT TakeOver 36 will take place on Sunday, August 22. This is the day after the WWE SummerSlam pay-per-view, which will be taking place on Saturday, August 21 from Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. It's been reported that NXT TakeOver will be held at the Capitol Wrestling Center inside the Performance Center in Orlando, Florida. Now, they kind of did this last year, didn't they? NXT TakeOver 30, NXT TakeOver 31. I mean, I don't mind the whole numbering thing. It's a bit like UFC, I guess. But I preferred it, and I know it's difficult when they're not actively traveling to different cities and different arenas. You can't do like NXT TakeOver New Orleans and all that kind of stuff. But maybe a little complaint from me would be you can still do NXT TakeOver like they did in the early days of TakeOver. NXT TakeOver Rival, NXT TakeOver Unstoppable, NXT TakeOver Our Evolution, NXT TakeOver Arrival, all that kind of stuff. They can do stuff like that. NXT TakeOver The End. I feel like the numbering thing's a little bit lazy, but it's going to be fascinating to have the pay-per-view, the big pay-per-view that weekend, and it's a big one, SummerSlam, being on the Saturday, then NXT TakeOver being on the Sunday. Obviously, usually NXT is a precursor to the big event, so it's going to be interesting to see how NXT responds to SummerSlam, if you will. If there's a bit of a hangover, or whatever, that's going to be certainly interesting. Toni Storm, of course, she's scheduled to make her debut on SmackDown this week. She is reportedly scheduled to work as a babyface on the main roster. Now, Storm has been working as a heel on the NXT brand as of late, but word now is that the current creative plans have her working as a babyface on SmackDown, according to PW Insider. As I mentioned, she is set to make her debut during Friday night's broadcast on Fox. I think this is a good thing. I think Toni Storm works better as a babyface. I wasn't massively behind the whole heel turn that she had in NXT earlier this year anyway. I don't think that suits her. I think the crowd organically likes her. Certainly social media does. So I think it's the right call to have her working as a babyface. It's just, the irony is, it's just, once again, isn't it? What you were doing in NXT, and it's the same with Karrion Kross as we started the video. What you were doing in NXT doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We've got different plans. You're going to be doing something else. You're a heel? Screw it. You're a babyface for us, brother. So I think it's ironic. Speaking of babyfaces, Rhea Ripley is officially a babyface now. Putting an end to that discussion, Rhea Ripley, WWE reportedly moving forward with Rhea Ripley as a full-fledged babyface on the Red brand. Ripley's babyface turn had quietly happened over the course of the last few weeks, according to PW Insider. This is what's stupid about WWE, is surely that shouldn't be quietly happening. Surely as a fan, as a viewer, we should be pretty aware that Rhea Ripley is a babyface. But the move was made clear internally that going forward, Ripley will now 100% be a babyface. Of course, she just dropped the Women's Championship to Charlotte Flair at Money in the Bank on Sunday. And then Nikki Ash cashed in her Money in the Bank briefcase on Charlotte Flair on Monday to win the Raw Women's Championship. I think it's good that there is finally some classification that Rhea Ripley is a babyface. Time will only tell, though, because the reason people were never sure, and she was like a heel before WrestleMania, then she became a babyface. The reason people weren't sure wasn't necessarily just because of the people she was teaming with, but because of the writing and the way she was being booked. I think WWE have been booking Rhea Ripley as a babyface ever since WrestleMania, to be honest with you. But their booking has been so bad, or they're trying to make Rhea Ripley seem, I don't know, edgy, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it's like WWE can't book a babyface. That's the problem. They try and book a babyface, and it's so bad that people just assume that must be a heel because they're really annoying. But it's good, I guess, to know that Rhea Ripley is a babyface going forward. There's a bit of an update on Xia Li. Obviously, there was a scary moment last night on NXT where it looked like she may have been injured. Xia Li was apparently okay after last night's NXT broadcast. Last night, the NXT main event saw NXT Women's Champion Raquel Gonzalez retain her championship over Li. Now, there was an incident towards the end of the match where Gonzalez delivered a twisting splash from the second rope, and the match had to be stopped while a referee and then two medical staff checked on Li from ringside. After a few minutes, Li got back up and the match resumed. Gonzalez immediately grabbed Li and delivered her finisher to end the match. match. Now, in an update, Fightful Select is reporting that Lee appeared to be okay after the match. It looked as if she may have injured her ribs in the rough spot, but this has not been confirmed as of recording right now. But reportedly, she was okay backstage, which of course is a relief. Finally, John Cena is having a bit of a run in WWE. He's not just coming back for SummerSlam and this week's Raw and SmackDown. WWE has officially announced the Summer of Cena. It was announced yesterday that John Cena will be appearing at 15 events this summer, from non-televised WWE Super Show live events to Raw and SmackDown tapings, concluding with the SummerSlam pay-per-view on August 21st in Las Vegas. Now, I think it's interesting, of course, that John Cena's final date with WWE in this Summer of Cena is SummerSlam, so that gives you an indication as to the outcome of SummerSlam against Roman Reigns for said Universal Championship. John Cena ain't winning that match, but it's a big match nevertheless, and WWE, of course, are thrilled with this because they've been struggling to sell tickets, not so much for the tapings. I mean, there have been certain tapings that have been a bit rough, reportedly, but mainly those super shows, those live events, WWE's really struggling to sell the tickets. So obviously, they're very happy that Cena is going to be there because that sells tickets. Now, is Cena going to be wrestling on those live events? We don't know. Right now, there had been rumors of possibly six-man tags with the Mysterios against Reigns and the Bloodline. I don't think that's been confirmed as of recording right now, but time will only tell. But Cena's sticking around for the summer, which is a big deal because we haven't seen him for a while, and we don't know when he's going to be back after this. So it's a big deal for WWE. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts and all of these WWE news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Go to the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or having come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.